Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Fake Accents Unite. I'm joined, as always, by the stone-faced Britisher. Good evening.
Hello, thank you. Good to see you again.
That was awful. No, we're going to have to redo that. No, let's redo
I was
that one.
completely thrown off by the fact that I had the stream playing on the computer. It was scheduled. I had the tab open, and then as soon as you started talking, it started playing in the other tab.
Oh dear.
I panicked.
Some of you may have noticed that the British accent is rather more fake this evening than we usually give him credit for.
Oh no, this is my genuine accent, and it's fake the rest of the time. That's why it's called Fake Accents Unite.
Of course. Sadly, the incumbent Britisher will not be joining us this evening. He's completely laid out by painkillers and his kidney stone, unfortunately. And whilst I would have loved to have a completely, not stoned, what's the word I'm looking for, like an inebriated sort of morphine...
Mollified.
Yeah, mollified, sort of morphined up Britisher on the show this evening. Very sadly, he's unable to make it.
And we wish you well, of course.
Apparently, we were 73.5 seconds late this week.
I think that's on time.
I'd say we're on time. I took us live at past. Must be just the stream delay. Clearly, I need to up my game and make sure that I account for that in the future. But no, you were just updating us on Pizzagate Part 2 on that's been going on Twitter. Why don't you explain that for the benefit of the chat?
Oh, must we go through it? If this was unpopular opinions, AA would be demanding that I explain the situation, but he's not even here. I don't even know if everyone in this chat even cares about who the academic agent is.
No one in my audience would care about AA. Would you, anyone? To see. Yep.
I was just going to say it's a sequel to the saga of Save Mr. Poe, where AA was lambasting my husband for not ordering his own food in restaurants, and now my husband has been redeemed in the eyes of AA, practically to the status of hero, by his what would you call it? His
by the mere act of slicing bacon and leaving it on the side.
Yes, by asserting his dominance over me. That's the expression I was searching for. He's now asserted his dominance as the man who wears the trousers in the relationship by demanding that I put bacon on the pizza I was making for us.
Yes, I understand that it's caused you to come afoul of various regulars on Unpopular Opinions.
Yeah, every time I come on, there's someone saying I should really let my husband order his own food. I can never escape it.
Well,
and now you know the truth, which is that I'm under his thumb.
And the truth being, of course, that the Britisher is married to Mr. Poe, and and indeed has been under the thumb of Mr. Poe now for some time. Yes, I can. We have a variety of topics to cover this particular week, but as people watching the stream can see, I've decided to adopt the rare picture of Peter Hitchens smiling as a good cover to avoid spoilers in the early minutes of Fake Accents when we're enjoying things.
Beautiful. Are we not going to be enjoying things soon then?
Who knows? We've got a fairly broad ramp of topics, as I say. We should also be joined momentarily by Oozaloo, who, those of you who have been around the show for a while, was somewhat of a semi-regular for a while, but then started doing his own Monday stream D&D stuff. That's come to an end now, so he will be popping in just a second, hopefully.
And when are we going to play D&D?
When are we going to have like not so obvious D&D going on?
Or the playing XCOM or Dark Souls or any of the fun things we always said we'd do.
I think we should definitely arrange some kind of combo stream at some point doing these sorts of things. Mira J in chat says, "Does my art make my show the X stream as opposed to the A, B, C, or D stream?" I think.
Does that mean you're the adult rated stream?
Yes, let's say when you're the X stream, is that the X rated stream, Mira? That's the real question. D&D is apparently a shite system, according to Admiral Belzeal. Go WFRP, whatever WFRP happens to be.
I thought I was I thought I was definitely going to be able to keep up with this conversation, having played a few systems back in my university days. But I can't even remember one, to be honest. There was one game I played where I was a pirate. I can't remember what it was called. Destiny, something like that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I have
The system was
absolutely
called. It was a system of D6s. Instead of having to haul around a D20 and all the other dice, you just had to use a bunch of regular D6 dice that you could, steal from your Monopoly set or whatever.
I don't know. I've played a little bit of Roll20, but apparently WFRP is Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. So there's that option available to us. We shall see. Seeing as every mid-sized YouTuber to all the way up to Sargon appears to have their own D&D stream at some point. Not that I'm advocating, just copying just by rote anything that anyone else is doing.
Obviously.
Makuta Pterodax says, it honestly says a lot about our Prime Minister that his approval ratings are highest amongst millennials, and they are not good. Do you have a link to that? Can you send me that on Twitter, Makuta Pterodax? Because I saw this story come up a little while ago, but I couldn't find anything specific on it to cover for this week. So if you've got anything there, we can certainly make that part of...
I think if I had to caution a theory on that, I'd have to say that the essence of Boris Johnson is irreverence. And so millennials, being the most irreverent generation, are charmed by him for that reason.
Boris, at the moment, it's interesting. I think his approval ratings being highest among millennials at the moment is more an indictment of the fact of how far his approval rating has fallen with everyone else, rather than a rise in the millennials. Boris has been unquestionably weak in recent months. Not just on coronavirus, which obviously he's been somewhat more outspoken on, although I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt given he came down with the virus, for more recent kind of abdication of duty. But even so, I think it was very telling that he made the decision to basically avoid touching the Black Lives Matter issue in its entirety. That's why I made my video, Where Are You, Boris Johnson? Although he did, I think he went on LBC the next day and gave a few kind of soundbitey answers again. But he's not exactly been visible. That's the main thing.
I think maybe ignoring all of this is the best thing you can do, to be honest.
It's certainly something to be said that obviously Keir Starmer's had to walk back statements, but I feel like having people need to know where you stand on issues as a Prime Minister, more so than if he's just a regular MP, and more so even than perhaps the party line, even if the party is not doing much with it. I think the Prime Minister having a particular statement not only helps guide people's view of where the Tories stand on these things, but everything else in between. I mean, we know from the YouGov polling, for instance, that the vast majority of the population are against, the tactics, if nothing else, of Black Lives Matter, for instance. And I think he should have reinforced his voter base there by assuring them that he's going to be the Prime Minister of law and order. It means that he doesn't have to make a concrete statement on, the message of Black Lives Matter, but him coming out and basically bringing Sadiq Khan to heel, basically saying that the police must do their job, especially given all of the how fervent, I would say, the Tory party has been in recent times about the whole coronavirus thing. They've had slogans for this sort of thing. But there's not even been anything decrying the vandalism or the rioting or the sheer bloody the attacks on police officers and people getting kicked in the streets and stuff like that. I think he could easily have made a statement about that without, causing damage to the party. Do you know what I mean?
I think you're right about that, but the only reason I said that perhaps ignoring it is a good tactic is just because attention is oxygen to the flame of social change, or these kinds of movements, they flourish on attention they get in the media and by the politicians, and so starving them of that oxygen is it's not just evasion. It can be tactical, I think.
I think there's a difference between evasion and allowing them to run rampant. And I
You're
don't.
right. I think enforcing the law is, it would be good in this situation.
First,
Uh,
first and foremost, his job as prime minister is part of his job is security of the realm. So it's his job to ensure that these things are said and done and enforced. There's a reason why the judiciary is separate from government, and obviously the police is part of the judicial system. But there should be a very clear and hard stance, and that would have shown him to be a prime minister with some backbone. Just saying, like, we need to be bringing ourselves together rather than driving each other apart. That sort of thing.
yeah,
It's not
I mean, a
difficult
nice,
rhetoric.
at least a nod to the ideas of law and order, and like you said, to the idea of unity would have been good, just as a kind of almost a wink and a nod to you know sorry about that, in the right direction.
Right. Uzlu appears to have got lost for the time being, but I have sent him an invite, and we'll see when he turns up. But let's move on to our first story of the evening, which, interestingly, is related to the kind of what we've just been saying about the police and needing a spine and whatnot. So if I take away this Hitchens image here, you'll notice that it says, "The police are under pressure to drop the terms Islamist and jihadi when describing terror attacks."
What are they going to say?
So exactly, there are some interesting options available. So this has been suggested by, it says here, a Muslim police organisation, but it's the National Association of Muslim Police, which has proposed a change in culture by moving away from terms which have a direct link to Islam and jihad, as these do not help community relations and public confidence. It's like you're talking about. I mean, the Islamic group as a whole is remarkably exclusionary anyway. It's like you only associate with Muslims and Muslim adjacent, so people who you're able to convert, because if they're not converted, they're kafar, and you don't touch them with a barge pole. And then you've also got the fact that in this country we have particularly radical and secessionist sort of communities of Islam. So we have the Wahhabism, for instance, which is banned in Saudi Arabia. That's the one, I believe, which is enforcing the niqab and stuff like that. But, so it's like community relations are not going to improve anyway just by renaming something. It's also about changing the public consciousness of these things, when it's like everybody knows that when someone screams Allahu Akbar and then attacks people, which is basically all of our terror attacks in the UK, then it's Islam related. You can stop calling it Islamist and just call it Islamic, if I'm perfectly honest, because it is the extreme fundamentalist Islamic position. It is where you can call it that because that's accurate, but they understand that changing, playing the language game is obviously the way. Control the language, control the people.
Yeah.
So,
we always talk about the language game, don't we? For this exact reason, if you change the words that we use to describe things, you can change how people think about them, and you can have a massive revolution without ever having to, lift a gun or fire a bullet. You can just explain a problem or wave just by in the same way that I think I don't know if this is a meme or if it's real, but the idea that you can't report the cause of death in Venezuela as starvation. It's illegal to report a death.
Have they made it illegal to report it as starvation now?
Oh, I don't know, illegal or just bureaucratically impossible. But you see what I mean? You just you can explain a problem away just by making it illegal to describe that problem.
Mm. I can see chat saying things like you can't change reality by changing the words used, but you can change people's perception of reality. This has been happening for years with the whole gender and sex debate and stuff like that.
Absolutely. I've been starting to wonder how much of my own perception has been manipulated in this way. If you see what I mean, we don't even know how much the words that we've been, that have been used around us, taught to us, and by contrast, the words that we haven't been hearing have been affecting us.
It's true. I mean, people again, Shard Klatuk there saying you can't do that. You can do it, but it's a generational thing. So it's more that people in the next generation come up with a different set of perceptions. But you cannot change the overall, the truth of the matter underlying it. And so if something continues on and it's just patently untrue, then it's obviously it's going to come back round. There will be a backlash to the language change and so on. We've just been joined by... Yes, we will see. We've just been joined by Uzlu. Good evening, sir.
Hello there. I have a bone to pick with you. I see I'm not on the thumbnail.
Well, I didn't expect you to be here for, when I first put out the call to things.
You've got to be on time if you want to be in the thumbnail.
The Britisher...
That's never been the rule before.
The Britisher is also not here, unfortunately. He's been taken away ill, so that's the sad thing. Yes, we are just talking at the moment, Uzlu, about the police being urged to drop the terms Islamist terrorism and jihadi when describing terror attacks. Are you familiar with this story?
Not with the story, but hasn't that been the reality for almost a decade?
Good point.
I mean, you say that, but I mean, it would be effectively, I think, at the moment, the police, especially counter-terrorism, describe these attacks as Islamist terrorism and jihadi. Certainly the chap I know who's worked in counter-terrorism refers to them that way. So this is an internal request by the National Association of Muslim Police to the Counter-Terrorism Board to change the way in which things are documented, rather than the way the media portrays them, because the media will follow suit because the police will make statements and they won't be allowed to mischaracterize them as such. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I was just going to say, I've got a hypothetical for you.
Go on.
That I think is kind of relevant to the story. So imagine we live in a world where you know that the police and the media cannot use the words Muslim, Islamic, or jihadi in reference to any terror attack, and then you find out that that someone who, say, knifed a bunch of people or shot some people, you find out that his name was Ahmed Mohammed. What are you going to think? I
don't think it's going to be effective in terms of the general public. I mean, people already know, and people get incensed about things like when the BBC reported the chap who stabbed 3 gay men in Reading Park, in a park in Reading, I should say, that the media tried to call him like a reformed Christian, and in reality, of course, he was a Muslim who claimed to have converted to Christianity, and then when he stabbed them, he was shouting Allahu Akbar. So,
well, that's my point, is that even if the person just happens to be, from a certain culture or looking a certain way, it's actually going to have the opposite effect, where because we're not allowed to call it, they're not allowed to report on all the details, we're just going to assume that everyone with a certain kind of demographic is a terrorist when we hear about them doing something bad. We'll never be able to hear do you see what I'm saying?
You have to call
ambiguous.
You have to call a stone a stone and a spade a spade.
And a stone a stone. If the media is in on the psyop, though, then they'll just follow suit and not tell us what the name of the guy is.
Oh, I have no doubt.
If they can get away with it.
So do you want to hear what the alternatives to Islamist terrorism are?
I'd love to.
So they've suggested
calling it... Middle East?
They've suggested
that seems to be the only practical alternative.
They've suggested including faith-claimed terrorism, terrorists abusing religious motivations, and adherents of Osama bin Laden's ideology.
Yeah, I mean, those are better than nothing, I guess, to be fair.
No, but it's completely...
Not sure they are, actually.
No. First of all, terrorists abusing religious motivations, you need to be specific, because you can't just distance yourself from the particular religion involved, because religions, being a set of ideas and precepts, are in and of themselves, specific and measurable, and they have particular beliefs that are differing between the religions, and it's disingenuous at best to do that, to not be specific. As for faith-claimed terrorism, it's like, I don't think we can... Faith is a subjective thing. I think that it, what's your alternative? Did someone commit an act of terrorism without having faith? Without having faith in it? If there's no antonym to it, it seems like a bit of a redundant statement. You may as well just call it terrorism. And then adherents of Osama bin Laden's ideology, well, we know that ISIS, for instance...
I wonder what that's called.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I mean. At least that's specific.
Well, again, but you don't know if Osama is the actual motivating force behind that. I mean, Al Qaeda was pretty much wiped off the map by ISIS. They must have had some conflicts and competing perspectives.
No, not necessarily. Same reason why the alt-right are against the Muslims. There's not much of an ideological separation. It's just competing for territory.
Yeah.
Good point.
So, but I still think that Osama bin Laden is a bit of a dated concept at this point.
That's probably what they're depending on.
Yeah.
It's very 2005, isn't it?
They want to drop...
So last decade.
They also they have also suggested replacing all of that instead with an Arabic word called Irabi, IRHABI, which is commonly...
Does that mean peace as well?
It means terrorist in the Middle East, and could be used to describe people that hold extremist ideologies. So it says, like, instead of calling it terrorism, we'll call it Irabi. It's like, do you want to just change our entire, change our national language to Arabic at this point, or we'll just start renaming everything in Arabic terms?
I ain't racist or nothing, but I hate those fucking Arabs.
Irabis, yeah. Because we should drop the word jihad, because the Arabic for struggle may refer in Islam to practicing faith and good deeds, as well as physical struggle for the purpose of self-defense only, which, first of all, we know is bullshit. Jihad is, struggle, but it's also used in the context of holy war. And not to mention...
If we just lie about the religion and change our beliefs according to those lies, then it means whatever we want. Therefore, Islam is a religion of peace. Fixed. That is what they're relying on. The kind of thing that they would step over in an instant if some other religion or other ideology tried it. But I am curious, what is the underlying root cause for why they are so determined to memory hole everything bad and psyop to the forefront everything good about Islam, which is tough, to say the least.
It's because
but they're managing it because they are a government. Why do they care this much? Is the question.
Because the people who are proposing this change are Muslim. And so because they're Muslim and they are government employees, they'll be like, you need to safeguard us, and this is how we want to safeguard you. And safeguard the rest of the they're framing this whole thing in terms of easing community tensions, right? If people don't associate terrorism with the Islamic community, then tensions will go down.
It can continue being violent no matter what we do about it. Because let's face it, the community tensions are going in one direction only, pretty much. But what was I going to say? I can't remember. I've lost it. Never mind.
I was going to say...
that was it. What do you reckon of the idea of a civil service purge every 10 years?
Sorry, say again?
What do you reckon to the idea of a civil service purge every 10 years?
I think it would be, just a purge as of now would be a good start.
I think we're more than 10 years overdue.
Yeah. The this is the difficulty. I mean, they've completely subverted the civil service. The civil service used to be somewhat... I suppose you'd consider it somewhat like the House of Lords, in that you would hope that regardless, their job was effectively to ensure that whatever government was incumbent at the time didn't go too far, didn't do too much to damage Britain's reputation, kind of hold the... not necessarily the public will, but perhaps the will of Britain as a whole.
I'm not necessarily... Sorry, go on.
Sort of going by the picture I have of the civil service. My dad worked for them for a little while, but also, from contemporary media like a Yes Minister, for instance, which, although they come off as a load of kind of self-centered bureaucratic pigs who are very self-serving, there's still this idea that to serve themselves, they have to serve Britain as a whole. Does that make sense?
The infrastructure of our nation in many different areas does rely on a strong individual culture, or an adherence to this is the culture of the country. And when you start to break that down, especially in the UK, it's not quite as necessary in the US, but in the UK, you get a lot of problems, which is what we're seeing now.
Yeah, not to mention, I mean, they pursued a policy of multicultural hiring for some time now. I mean,
anti-white employment.
I just mean, like, they want to get all their little demographics up, don't they? Like 30 or 40 years.
Except for one.
Apart from one. Yeah, but 30 years of that, which has done immeasurable damage, rather than hiring on the basis of, who you might consider to be sound people. I don't have a problem with, I can't remember the name of the chap, but there's a Sikh who's really super pro-Britain. He's, draped in Union Jacks all the time, that sort of thing. If he wants a job in the civil service, more power to him. Same with who's that? Who's the former Nigerian or Kenyan kind of voiceover guy who does all the Kekistan meme videos?
Tyrone?
Big man Tyrone. Because he came over. He lives in Brighton now, I think. And he just recently, last year, got his British citizenship. And he sang the national anthem and that sort of thing. And he truly, he loves Britain, from everything that I've seen of him. So I have no problem with people like that, genuine patriots, for lack of a better term, because they... these are people who are bringing Britain to heart. I don't have a problem with them. I have an issue with people who conform to the multicultural agenda, who are hired by people who are pushing that agenda, who are not necessarily interested in as many perspectives as possible, but a particular kind of worldview that, the way I see it, is it's all been subverted, really, since the Blair years. That's probably where I think the tipping point was, although I don't know, given the mood change in Britain, whether or not that's been going on for longer. Big man Tyrone is from Cameroon, apparently. Thanks for that.
Camerooning.
EC90 says, Bin Laden is a bit of a dead concept at this point. Thanks for that, EC90. Anaquin Cringewalker says, it increasingly sounds like the police have been politicised, but by who? The chiefs, the commissioners? Where does it come from? How might you encourage the police to break indoctrination?
That is a good question, because I've talked to police. Well, you guys probably know him, Binary Surfer. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if he was in the chat right now. But I talked to him a few years ago about this. The problem is that they are hiring as managers people who have no experience, and the kind of people who would be managers in civil service jobs these days are infiltrating the institution's Marxists.
So two things come to mind from myself. The first is when you remember a couple of years ago they tried to make it so that you needed a degree in order to become a PC. That has thankfully now been...
Yeah, I bet that helped.
That's now thankfully been dropped, but was in effect for a couple of years. Then there's also the fact that you used to have on-the-beat experience. There was no way for you to go in direct entry into as a police officer. that's now been dropped. So yes, you can go in as these management effectively early without any experience of working it. It's very similar in some ways to what's happened to the military. I went in as a direct entrant officer, which was somewhat novel compared to how it always used to happen. But also, I guess there's just a lot of pressure. You'd be surprised from the MOD, funnily enough, which are all the civil servants in government. So they're people who are pushing a lot of this progressive agenda. They're the ones who handle all the recruitment and the advertising for the armed forces. And the police, as I understand it, will also have a lot of pressure from not just general advocates and pressure groups and whatnot, but also the CPS, which, don't forget, was run by Keir Starmer for I can't remember how many years, but he was certainly at the top of it in the 90s when they was trying to get people like Jimmy Savile and some of the grooming cases and stuff like that. So
wait, the CPS stand for Child Porn Sequesterers?
Crown Prosecution Service.
I do know what it stands for, thank you. I really appreciate that.
But I just...
Yeah,
no jokes on an NSO stream.
Look, you can make jokes, I just can't guarantee that they'll fly.
I can guarantee they'll fly straight over your head.
Yeah, probably. Go on.
The boots on the ground that are the actual bobbies on their beat. They hate all this.
But they never get to advance because half the positions at the top have already been filled by the civil service recruitment bids. And then what they did was the first thing that happened was they stopped hiring at all. They said the armed forces and the police are bloated and too large. So we're going to let a load of people retire, and then we'll hire a load more new people. And when they came to hire new people, they realised that actually there was this huge gap between that arose basically a few years later between the new recruits, then the gap, then the people who were retiring out of things too fast. So they had to find a way to fill those gaps, which is when all the direct entrant stuff came in. And that's probably it, because you've ended up effectively splitting off the new recruits from all of the experience of the old. And that opens them up to ideological subversion, unfortunately.
Makes sense.
That's what makes sense to me, anyway. We've obviously, got this. Thankfully, David Tube of Quilliam, which is obviously the counter-extremism think tank, told the Times, people do not like to feel that they are being told only the partial truth. There is a serious problem with Islamist terrorism. The use of any term that obscures that fact risks damaging public trust in the police, if it could be damaged any more than it already has, with both the grooming cases and the coronavirus mishaps that we've been seeing across the country. But at least someone is standing up to this particular and insidious language change that's being proposed. Because the police have said there is no certainty over whether the proposed changes will go ahead, which means they're at least considering it, and it's probably being agreed sort of in verbally, if not in writing yet. That's all that says to me. Because they're quite happy to, especially if Sadiq Khan gets behind it and that sort of thing, they're quite happy to spunk money at this sort of thing. You know, it's almost as bad as the language changes for masters and slaves in IT, Oozlu. I'm sure you've been following that.
Oh, yes.
Yes, I'm aware of it. I mean, that one's less objectionable because it's so arbitrary, but the objectionable nature of it comes from the fact that it's just yet more propaganda, and no one's properly resisting it. But, I mean, all this does is filter out the organizations who are more interested in appearing moral according to one esoteric ideology than doing a good job. It's like Discord. The new features they've been adding over time has dropped precipitously to the point that now there's one called Gilded, which is better in most features, and it's just ready and waiting, because Discord's been spending so much time on their ideological shit. At least that's probably what it is. And there's so many things they could have done differently. As a software designer, the idea of people wasting time on how exactly to fit the ideology into your software rather than just making good software is pretty abhorrent. But that's the world we live in. Silicon Valley should be glassed as well.
Speaking of language changes, I was going to bring up a phrase that I learned today from a BBC article, which is BIPOC. Quick quiz for you. Do you know what that stands for?
No.
It's Black
or
Indigenous.
Indian picker of cotton.
Black or Indigenous person of color.
What?
That's the new way of saying BAME or POC, and it was invented 2 months ago, according to Google Trends.
Oh, for fuck's sake!
No, I think it's picker of cotton. I think you'll find that's the correct vernacular. Ask anyone, especially the ones who get really offended when you ask them.
I will.
Architect of Fate says, "It's his time. The Britisher is indisposed and cannot even listen to this stream. You can finally reveal yourself to be the one, the only, Ivan Rebrov. Any thoughts on what happened to the judge in the Deutsche Bank Epstein case?" Ah, yes. We'll have to come on to that a little bit.
Not even the first person with an attempted assassination around the Epstein case who was overseeing the case. I think there was one or maybe two others who just happened to die.
Well, they didn't attack her. They killed her son and injured her husband.
I know. Well, I either way, it looked like, whether it was intended to kill her or not, that would make her approximately the third person who's been either the target of violence or had her family targeted by violence in the Epstein case. I think two judges, it might have been just one, but I think it was two, if my memory serves, judges who were overseeing it died of natural causes soon after he was put in there.
It was clearly the coof, man. That's what it is.
It was actually pre-coof, but that would have been a good excuse, wouldn't it? Speaking of which, how's Ghislaine's lungs holding up?
Yeah, I don't know. There's not actually been that much movement on that, as far as I'm aware. I assume they've set a hearing.
Oh,
date.
don't worry. Making sure that there's no movement is the plan.
Yes. How long before she suicides herself? That is the question. And how many
bullets will she put in the back of her head?
How many people will be watching her, or supposed to be watching her, at the time when she does it? How many can they
Don't worry. Don't worry. I hear that they have employed an excellent security guard to make sure that she is protected, by the name of Luigi Clintonelli.
Oh, really? Because
famous Italian bodyguard.
See, I thought that it was Clint Hilarion.
Ah, that's another one of the world's top bodyguards. Yeah, I remember them. I remember the news about that now. They've got a crack team of people with strangely similar names.
How long before you get my stream taken down, just like yours gets taken down every single time that we see it?
You shouldn't have said that, because now that's my objective.
Clint Hilton.
Hey guys, you want to know the best thing about Ghislaine Maxwell? She's got dirt on all the big... Yes, but just in case anyone doesn't know what NS is referring to, I have had one stream taken down twice. So one 4-hour stream taken off YouTube twice in the same stream whilst it's live, and the only consistent feature I can find is that I was talking about Ghislaine Maxwell during that stream.
Yeah. Worth a shot, that one, seeing as a certain someone's featured on it as well.
Who was that?
Myself, obviously.
I see.
Oh, were you on that one? God, I'd forgotten.
Yeah, I remember you coming into my DMs and begging me to come on. Something about prostrating yourself in front of me.
You not being able to prove that claim.
Offering to fillet me for money or something. You just need to ask, man. It's not a problem.
Man, if that's the kind of perception you have of our relationship, no wonder you're such a cuck when I'm around.
It's good to have you on the stream, man.
Is it really? Is that just a reflexive thing you say to guests?
He never says it to me.
No. No comment, Poe.
Man,
no comment.
Since we're bullying NSO, why have you put so little effort into your overlay? You should do what I do and spend most of your time on it.
Yeah, you basically have more systems set up to control your stream overlay than you put into any of your research or anything.
What research?
Exactly.
I just have people link stories that are interesting in my Discord, and then I look over them in the stream. No preparation at all.
No preparation necessary. In fact, that's what you should call your new
works for me.
streams. That's what you should call your new ones. No preparation necessary if you're going to homogenize the titling of them.
It's not a bad idea, but I think Wizard and Chill is pretty suiting to what goes on there. Sorry, Poe, you were trying to say something then, and the men flagrantly mansplained over the top of you.
It's called Manterrupting, and I'm mansplaining it to you.
Shut up! It's called Manterrupting.
I now forgot what I was going to say.
I'll move us on to our next.
I think that's got a name as well. I think they've actually given a name to that phenomenon as well.
What? Moving on to the next topic?
No. For when men interrupt and women forget what they were going to say, I vaguely remember they have given a name to that blames men.
Like Manesia.
It's not bad, actually.
I love it. Manesia.
Let's move on to Black Lives Matter, because they've been.
I just remembered what I was going to say.
Go on.
I was going to say, if you want to get the stream taken down, we should talk about the Dam Busters dog who had his gravestone removed because it was too offensive.
Oh, for goodness sake! Yes.
Just very quickly, what are the rules for what we can say on this stream? Just curious.
You can say whatever you want to, Zulu. We're more than 20
the dog was called Nigger.
Yes, the dog was indeed called Nigger.
He's not lying. It's
No. Same as Lovecraft's cat, interestingly. Although I don't think those stories are related.
Lovecraft's cat was actually called Nigger Man. If I can...
yes.
What's it called when a woman corrects you?
I believe it's just called a correction.
I think that's just called feminism.
It's just called Monday.
It's just called misandry in my book. That's what it is. You'd only correct me if you wanted to bring me down a peg. If you wanted to shame me on my own stream, Poe. That's what it is. Just
most people can do that by accident.
Stop hating on me. That's what it is. Okay. So the mayor of Bristol, the Black Mayor of Bristol, as it says here, reveals that he has been racially abused by supporters of Black Lives Matter and Britain First in City Statues Row. Now,
honestly, mate, if you're being racially abused from both extremes, you're probably not being racially abused. You're probably just a cunt.
Probably. I mean,
or correct. The extremes don't like it. That's possible too.
This is the great unifying moment for both BLM and Britain First, of course, that they'll come together as one. Britain Black Lives Matter First, or something like that, in order to abuse him. Marvin Rees.
The ideology is very different, but the methods are going to be exactly the same. Actually, that's probably not fair. Britain First is nowhere near as pushed to the public as BLM, so their methods would have to be very different. That like the horseshoe thing, there are similarities between the extremes, definitely, and sometimes a lot, but sometimes they are quite different in what they do. But that's usually not out of a natural way of things, because Britain First will be extremely marginalized in society, and BLM will be extremely, well, what's the word? Majoritized? Majorized? Promoted, essentially? Made into the majority voice in the media. So, yeah, other than that, they might be similar, but because of that, they are totally different, I would imagine.
It's almost as if they're completely different organisations. The Mayor of Bristol has revealed how he was racially abused by both Britain First and Black Lives Matter because he ordered the removal of a statue of Jen Reid, the Black Lives Matter protester, just 24 hours after it was erected. Yes, and now we're covering it here, Uzulu. I don't know if you've clicked this, but you're on a different show. But
mate, come on, can I not at least mention that is a story I've covered? Because I don't cover many. I'm not saying you can't cover it because I already did. Like, I covered the statue being taken down. There was a video on YouTube of some citizen journalist went on and she was definitely very in support of the statue, very against Whitey. So she went down there and she said, we're going to interview some random people. First person that she interviewed looked like she was a plant, like a globalist plant of a stereotypical black student activist. And she said, I just rolled out of bed this morning, put on anything I could find, and she is like a sculpted black student activist stereotype.
Yeah.
So that was clearly bullshit. The second one was a black male student who had a predictable position. The third one was a white Karen, and that was it. So yeah, me and the stream had fun predicting how the bias would go, and it turns out we were completely right.
Sounds about right.
But there's plenty of people in Bristol, I'm sure, who don't mind glorifying someone who did a lot of good for Bristol and not glorifying someone who literally their only achievement was breaking shit and then raising a hand.
Yeah. That's the thing. It's pure vandalism. I love the fact that it's because it's a resin statue. It meant that it wasn't just that someone
burn it. Resin burns.
But it's not just that someone went out and made a statue of her. She would have had to sit down to take a mold for it before it went out. So
no. It was a scan. They said it was. I don't know if you ever seen these things. It's pretty cool. It's like a little You know, in Star Trek when they have a tricorder and they scan you, beep, 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 beep. I do it in my hand, but I'm not on camera.
No, I don't.
You have a laser grid that spins around the head and reads how far each part of the local grid is. Yeah, they've been doing that for years. It's good, though.
I just want to make sure that everyone understands that no talent at all went into the crafting of this.
Now, you know what would be better? If it was a mold and they had to blackface her to do it.
But yes, basically the statue went up, needed to be taken down because, again, there's no approval for it. And funnily enough, you don't follow the democratic process, things are supposed to be taken down. You'd think that they would have been able to follow that through. Because, of course, this is the thing. The Edward Colston statue was not that controversial. And whilst I think that the council was being a little bit obtuse in not just putting a plaque on the statue, depends what the plaque was meant to say, but everybody understands, every rational person understands that when you put up a statue, you're putting up a statue to an act, and then ostensibly the person who committed that act, and the positive things about that person that you want to emulate. Nobody is looking at that statue and going, "Cool, Edward Colston, yeah, he did a bit of stuff for Bristol, but damn, slave trading, eh? We should bring back the slave trade."
Well, I mean, some people might be. You know, I think with all the ruckus that's been going on recently, I think it's time for white people to apologise for ending slavery.
I was going to say that since I'm replacing the Britisher tonight, maybe it's a good time to pointlessly argue against something that everyone agrees with, and say that why don't they take down all of Banksy's murals, all of these works of art that some of them are good, but some of them, let's face it, are a bit shit, and yet they stay up because nobody gave permission or voted on there being a Banksy mural in such and such a place. I used to live around the corner from a Banksy mural.
Banksy,
and nobody. They protect them. They put up sort of barriers to make sure that no one tries to take them down.
Well, Banksy's a funny
this
one.
Vandalism is good. We like it.
Banksy's a funny one because, of course, he made his political statements, and he made quite a few of them in quick succession, and then he got noticed, and a load of people preserved his art, and now, of course, he sells pieces of it for millions. Clearly very wealthy. I think he vandalised a train carriage recently about the whole coronavirus thing. Put a load of rats coughing on stuff all through it.
That's anti-Semitic.
He's definitely become a lot less edgy and a lot more mainstream. Of course, the City of London was basically like, yeah, we're going to paint over this, but we're inviting Banksy to, of course, to put up the art in somewhere else, and we're quite happy for him to do that. He just needs to talk to us, which is weird for someone who is, a criminal in name only, despite the fact that he still hides his face and stuff like that.
I was actually kind of shocked they took the statue down for many of the same reasons I think you're talking about there. I was expecting it to be a Chaz situation where the town would protect it. But no, they took it down next day. It was actually really impressive. And it was nice to see the statue being hoisted up by construction equipment and literally dumped in a skip.
Yeah.
That is nice to see.
Should have been melted down right in front of them.
I'm with you. Resin, I don't know if all resin burns, but some resin burns. Should have just lit it on fire. It would have actually served a purpose then, keep people warm.
I wonder what the conversation would be if it was actually a good piece of art. aside from whatever the political message behind it is, if the statue is actually like good, if it required talent to make it, and it was, beautiful in some way, I wonder if the conversation would be different, or whether, okay, it was put up illegally, they tore down, Edward Colston, whatever. It's got to go in the skip.
At the end of the day, it's got to be something which is in the general will. So if the mayor had felt that, that there was actually some kind of grand public support for this, but I think he's getting outside pressure from people who are saying, why have you allowed this to happen? Because he's been dead quiet on the whole Colston issue. I think the British mentioned in the week that was that they should dredge him out the river. I think he has already been, and put back until they can get a petition going that has, actually provably means that people want it gone. Because we know, again, from all the polling, that 3/4 of people don't want to subvert the rule of law when it comes to these things. And I'd say that even though that 27% of people who are in support is rather scarily high, it's still, you don't want minority rule when it comes to these things.
Sorry, is that support
Okay,
of Black Lives Matter, or is that support of the statue being taken down specifically?
I believe that was a YouGov question on the tactics of Black Lives Matter shortly after the Colston statue came down. So
Okay.
that's where that comes from. But
I have to say, chat has a brilliant suggestion. I wish I'd thought of this.
go on.
Before you burn it, use the statue as a mold to make some real dolls.
Some real like the sex.
Yeah, that's art. Then you can burn it.
Just very strange. The general will. Am I channeling Rousseau now? No, it's not about that. But you're talking about local government. I'm not talking about.
I wonder what Rousseau had to say about real dolls.
I'm not talking about a referendum, a nationwide referendum on whether or not the statue should come down. But I think that local people have a right to decide what goes on in their local area. And I think that vandalism of public property should be punished and shouldn't be allowed to happen. Rule of law. But yes, so the Bristol mayor has been abused over this whole situation, apparently. He's received many messages from BLM protesters calling him an Uncle Tom. I'd be interested to know how many of those protesters are white. Bristol being a predominantly black area, of course. So
yeah, the people using anti-black slurs against him should definitely be more representative of the community they serve. They're far too white at the moment. We need more diversity in people calling black people slurs meant to be used by other black people.
Mm. Apparently, he had a black guy tell him he's not black, and then an email from someone said, "Go back to your own country." I get it from all sides.
Wow.
He was keen not to have the statue row define his leadership. Well, I don't think he gets a choice in that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Which is, again, why he's been remarkably quiet. If he just, again, rule of law. And what can they say to him? Like, all it does is it makes BLM look bad if they're, like, screaming, Uncle Tom at him whilst he is effectively doing what British law upholds,
Is Uncle Tom a racial slur? Can we that's a good question, I think.
I mean,
Can we say that's
it's
a
only ever
internal racial slur.
Yeah.
It can be used externally, but it usually used internally.
I mean, the black community gets away with a lot because of the whole N-word debate, about who's allowed to say what.
Am I allowed to call a black person an Uncle Tom? Am I allowed to say that Thomas Sowell is an Uncle Tom?
Depends where you are. I think the best way of deciding on who gets to use the N-word is that whites invented it, so blacks using it as cultural appropriation.
Hmm.
Apparently, an empty plinth is the best way to express the city. I choose to focus on the issues of substance, he said, like the history of the city that you are in charge of, that has been placed into your safekeeping. Like,
they should make a statue depicting Colston building Bristol with slaves. Twice as big as the old one.
I mean, if they raise enough money, then the head can rotate so that if you're standing inside the head, you can look out upon his ever-expanding empire. That's what that could be. He said, I didn't want to take down the statue of a black woman. I took down the intervention of a white London-based artist.
Wow.
Oh dear.
Oh dear. So it's not even the fact that he's taken down, like, an act of vandalism, effectively. It's that...
I didn't want to do something bad against a protected class.
No. We'll have to...
Even though it was a statue.
No, but if the artist is white, it's fair game, you know? Ridiculous.
Hey, Painted Blue makes a good point. The statue couldn't be bronze, or anything similar, because the culture it's depicting never made it to the Bronze Age. You do wonder why the best technology that Africa made on their own was mud huts, and then Asia and Europe built civilization as it is today, and then it just sort of like flowed into all these other places, like the Middle East and Africa, where they did it badly, but it was the same thing they just took from us. What? Sorry, I slipped into the truth there. Back on NSO stream, we're talking about a dog called Nigger?
Uzlu, are you a racist?
Am I a racist?
Are you a
I
racist?
will erase pencil mistakes if they're in the way.
Are you going full Wignat on me right now?
Well, I don't think there's anything I can say now that won't be mocked on one side or the other. Let me just say this, though. This is my overriding principle on this matter. A statement can be both true and racist.
True.
And I don't consider racist to be a social ill, nor a significant malady. I consider it to be a technical definition and an interpersonal matter of rudeness sometimes. But if it's true, I will say it.
Take from that what you will, chat. Take from that what you will. George says, how about, just jumping back to the Islamist terrorism thing for a second, George says, how about we call them hyper-devout religious activists or non-specific Abrahamic clerical counterculturalists?
That last was quite good.
Yeah.
It's got to be austere religious scholar, right?
Austere religious scholars, one and all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Austere religious scholar at work.
Yes.
Austere religious scholar during praxis.
Yes. Wes Weilevan says, great stream, but who's this Uzlu guy? Sounds pretty shifty to me. Best keep an eye out when this gent is around. I mean, it's very nice of him to call you a gent, Uzlu.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of offended by that part. Wes is a friend of mine. He's currently listening to the stream on my Discord. I'm definitely not rebroadcasting like I do with my own streams, just as a happenstance of the way that the setup works. And he's sitting there listening, probably laughing at it right now. And the fact that you couldn't pronounce his last name leads me to believe that, yeah, this is the first time he's been on this channel. So you're welcome. Not so obvious.
How should he be pronounced?
I don't know, but I say Wes Wiley.
Fair enough. Object of Hate says, thoughts on Cummings taking aim at the MOD? I've not heard about this. Do you know about this?
I haven't seen this, actually.
I haven't heard about this, but I'm a massive fan of Cummings, so I'm in favour of it, even without knowing what it's about.
You're such a child sometimes, isn't it?
You only didn't laugh because you muted yourself to stop yourself from laughing.
I have no comment on this particular.
You didn't even pronounce the S on the end of Cummings very well, Poe, so it sounded even better.
Marvellous. Yes. But staying on...
Be honest, you laughed too.
Staying in the realm of melanated people, as Nick Cannon described them when he went off on his completely nonsensical rant on how the people of the sun were the gods of the old time, and how we, lacking their melanin, had to become savages in order to survive, basically.
Turns out they were dick washers.
Yeah,
you weren't gangs, you were dick washers.
You were dick washers. But no.
Tell me, why'd you gotta go and be so melanated? That's what I always think of. I hope that didn't get you demonetized.
Yeah. We just get a copy strike now from Avril Lavigne. Dev Patel.
You know who wrote? God damn it! You're such a girl.
Never mind. Dev Patel.
Go and buy some testosterone before the Muslims show that they have more than you.
Dev Patel has been cast as Sir Gawain in The Green Knight. Now, the Britisher did cover this in the week that was, but basically, this is a story based on a 14th century Middle English romantic tale, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. And they're basically doing a stylish, surreal take on the fantastical, putting Dev Patel front and centre as the titular Gawain. Now, obviously, there was a big thing probably about 10 years ago now, where people, especially like the Asian community, and by this I mean the Oriental Asian community, the Far East, were getting irritated, and a load of white people were getting irritated at the kind of the number of kung fu kind of action flicks coming out with white protagonists, right? So they're saying like, "Oh, you're white. You're whitewashing."
They are made in the West.
I know. I don't have I don't have a personal issue with it. But you remember,
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just saying that is one good argument that should be okay. But this is criticizable.
Yes. So So those being made, that they had the standard of whitewashing being a problem, right? This is a big thing, and all of a sudden we've got to the point where everything must be blackwashed, from period dramas like Downton Abbey to like I watched 1917. Have you seen that one?
Yeah, that was a big deal when it came out. The 1917
Russian Revolution.
thing.
Like there were like out of everything in British history, there were, I believe, 2 regiments which were Sikh, and there was 1 regiment which was West Indian at the time, maybe more. But basically, aside from the fact that we practiced quite heartily segregation in those times, because the units were made up of PALS brigades, so it was based on your local area, but they decided that, in order to avoid racial tensions, they would segregate their black and brown units. And so they did. And so the idea from the fact that there's just these random little black faces interspersed amongst the white among the fight for World War One is just completely nonsensical. And then we have this, which is, despite the fact that it's obviously a mythological tale, it's set in 14th century Middle England. The percentage of foreign-born, especially African and Indian foreign-born migrants would be effectively 0. And even if some were over here, there is absolutely no way that they would be in the nobility or the knightly class. And so it's just one of those little tiny subversions. I appreciate that it's just a little bit of reeing at a casting choice, but
yeah, kind
of. At the same
the problem
time,
is that the setting is small, but it's directly out of 1984. And so the actual tactics are a big deal. If these tactics were extrapolated to a larger setting, it would be catastrophic. So this is like the tip of the iceberg, essentially.
The thin end of the wedge, I think.
That is the other way of saying that, yes.
Can anyone in the chat confirm I've just heard a rumor from my husband that you can't be nominated for an Oscar if you have an all-white cast.
What?
In a film. I don't know if this is true. That's why I'm asking for confirmation. But it's possible that either there's a hard rule or at least a what do you call it? A etiquette. I can't think of the right word right now, but
I'm being told by my Discord that apparently that happens in the BAFTAs.
Maybe it's the BAFTAs he was talking about. I mean, is it a TV show or a film that we're talking about here?
Is it a TV show?
Okay, well then it would be the BAFTAs then.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, but to go off what you were saying, I think that is interesting. I mean, that is a larger pattern. But to get upset about any one particular film, I think I just can't work up a stress about it. There's not enough time in the day to get upset about that sort of thing. But I agree that a larger pattern, or the end of the slippery slope, or the fat end of the wedge, whatever you want to call it, is more troubling than.
No,
much
come
more
on.
troubling
NSO's
than
been trying to
any
lose
one
weight
situation.
recently.
Shut up. The apparently it is a film. So there's
Okay.
that,
Okay.
that side of things.
Like they can be good as well. The Witcher cast Triss Merigold, who is fucking ginger, as with a black woman. But The Witcher is fucking great, in my opinion. I know I'm somewhat alone in that, but I thought it was brilliant. So it definitely can be done, and that was actually about the only SJW shit in there. But even with that, like, it can be good. This might be a good film, but why do they need to put the propaganda in it? And when they're putting propaganda in it, it's likely that they're taking energy out of making it a good film. I can't necessarily explain why all the propaganda films or all the propaganda games or other stuff with like a 90+% success rate are shit. But it happens anyway. So
here's
there must be something to it.
proposal for you. What if Dev Patel was just the best actor in that role, in that audition? You know, what if he was just the best choice for the job, regardless of his race?
Then that is debatable, honestly. I'm not closed to the idea of rejigging. Like, historicity is not necessarily the top priority. The problem is, why are they doing this? And if they are not doing it simply because he was the best person for the role, then they are doing it for propaganda purposes, and that will make it bad. And that is like yet another thin end of the wedge in society. So yeah, I can definitely see what you're saying.
You do raise a good point, but
it's not a meritocratic case I'm making. Like, the meritocratic aspect of it is fine if he genuinely was, but I suspect he wasn't, and that's just a pattern we've seen so oft repeated across media.
He's a good actor and he's famous. So, you know, if he was playing Robin Hood, you know, the main role, or, you know, Maid Marian or something, then I think there'd be a stronger case for it. But for all I know, he did actually deserve that role because he is a very famous actor compared to most people you see on TV. He's, you know, on maybe not in a very famous film actor.
I've got a solution. We just put him in whiteface for the whole thing. Simple as that.
Arabs are about as white as whites are, anyway. Most of them. But yeah, no, Poe, you are correct. If he is the best person for the role, then that's probably fine. As I said, historicity is not necessarily the top priority.
No,
it's only that it's likely. Yeah, it's likely that he was picked for other reasons, and those other reasons are fucking cancer.
Yeah,
but we'll never know, and we are making an inference there. Unfortunately.
Alas, yes. A lot of this has to be unfortunate.
Speaking of The Witcher, though, and your lack of a problem with Triss, I've got a couple of Polish friends, and they're pretty Witcher mad. I mean, obviously, the books are written in their country, and it's kind of their equivalent of Harry Potter and that sort of thing.
There is a strange obsession with The Witcher in Poland. Like, more so than Harry Potter, it seems like to me.
I don't know. There's some pretty nutty Harry Potter fans. So, but they were really irritated at the fact that basically no Eastern Europeans were cast at all. Yeah. You know, like, given that that's the region it's supposed to be like. Because there was some talk as well of like the fairies of the forest or whatever it is that are black in The Witcher for no apparent reason, even though they're described more like contemporary, more like classical fairies and stuff like that. And they were like, they couldn't even make them blonde, you know. It was just.
Are those not? I think those are elves. I'm trying to remember the specifics.
Yeah, elves. Sorry.
Yeah, it seems like they used. I had forgotten about that. That is a fair point. They did also make them black for some reason.
I know,
but if it was made in India, I would understand why they were all Indian. But it's made in the West, so at the very least, we can understand why most of them are likely to be, especially if it's Eastern European and Western European are not as distinguishable as Western European and black. So the difference is not quite as profound. Sure, you could have put more Eastern Europeans in there. It would have been probably good if they'd done that, but the cast they've got is really good. Even though I think Triss should not have been played by a black woman, she did a fine job. So
I know nothing about The Witcher. I've never played any of the games. I've never read any of the books. I really enjoyed the series, but I can understand from other stuff that I've had, that I've seen that's been adapted for the screen, which come from series that I do know and I do enjoy, that it's very jarring when someone matches absolutely nothing in the description of that person. It doesn't matter how well they play it. It's like it's a bit of a problem.
Yeah. I will say that Triss, the actress's facial structure, strangely looks quite a lot like Triss from the games. But the skin color being brown instead of white and the hair color being black instead of orange is pretty jarring, yes. Go on, Poe.
I was just to say we can't treat the games as the source material, even though that is the way that a lot of people are approaching it. But I understand that the description in the book is different as well.
Yeah. I'm not sure if her facial structure is designed in the book, described in the book, but I strongly suspect that her hair color is. And you don't get very many ginger black people, I'm afraid.
Arc 5 says, just think of V as Geralt. Can you imagine? He's just going along singing his...
Has anyone noticed that V has the body type of Gru from Despicable Me?
I mean, I thought that's what they based it on.
That's viable, yeah. Netflix adaptation. Someone do a Netflix adaptation version of Despicable Me with V as Gru.
Have you not seen the V streams where Steve Carell is method acting, living alongside him, just so that he can get the voice right?
Imagine living alongside V and not being a pigeon.
He's got engaged recently, good for him.
I heard about that. Yeah, my condolences.
Right, going to move us on to our next story. So again...
NSO has muted Poe the person?
I have not. She's muted herself.
No, she's apparently having issues.
Oh dear, this will be a Discord thing once again. I hope she can rejoin us soon. So this is a Netflix story. Do you know what I'm going to tell you about?
Not immediately. I didn't have time to look at the news today. I was too busy doing Chad things.
This is from about 3 or 4 days ago. Netflix has lost its move to axe someone called Monique, as in Mo apostrophe Neek. Her sex...
Monica?
Her sex and racial discrimination suit over her comedy special Pay. So she basically, the comic and Precious Oscar winner, real name Monique Hicks, was offered $500,000 for a stand-up special in 2017, and she claims that this is not just an insult but illegal. Note that she accepted this at the time. Her gender and racial discrimination filing last November over a potential comedy special cites the tens of millions reportedly paid to the likes of Amy Schumer, Ricky Gervais, Ellen DeGeneres, and Dave Chappelle for their Netflix specials. The 2019 suit also alleges that Netflix's treatment of Monique began with a discriminatory lowball offer and ended up with a blacklisting act of retaliation. So it's like nobody's ever heard of her. That's the thing.
I haven't. I've heard of Precious.
I've not even heard of Precious. But it's the fact that she thinks that she can stand there like Amy Schumer is the lowest brow comedy possible, right? We know it's not even.
I think she smashes through the bottom and goes well into the negatives. Actually,
exactly. Be careful, you'll be giving her material there. But she basically has.
Well, she needs it. She stretches everything she gets. Sorry, go on.
She's grifted her way up to the pay grade. She's done exactly what this woman presumably is hoping to do. Whereas Ricky Gervais, the most celebrated comedian of the year, host of things like the Golden Globes, he's like the most highest paid comedian in the world at the moment because he's sold out tours, like a world tour, not to mention all the money he made from Afterlife.
Except Joe Biden.
I don't even get the reference.
Have you not seen any of the videos of him just trying to speak and totally ruining it? There's nothing funnier.
I've seen it. It's kind of sad watching an old man slowly wander off the dead.
I can compartmentalize the sadness and the joy, though.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough.
Sorry, go on.
No, so Ricky Gervais, like arguably the highest rated comedian in the world, regardless of what you think of him at the moment. Ellen DeGeneres, of Ellen fame, one of the, up there with Oprah in terms of, those female talk show sort of bestsellers, and Dave Chappelle. She's been
going for ages.
And Dave Chappelle, who didn't he have like a comeback tour because he was at the time he left comedy one of the highest rated comedians, if not the highest rated comedian in America. and then he's come back for this special, and they paid him more than they'd ever paid for a special before. And this woman thinks that she, has the gall to claim that she's on the same level as these kind of stars. She wants $13 million for her Netflix special, as opposed to 500,000. I'm pretty sure, despite all of
there are some familiar numbers there.
Despite all of the diversity hiring that Netflix no doubt does, despite the weird rules that we've seen come out of Netflix, like co-workers not being allowed to talk outside of work hours and not being allowed to discuss anything other than work, and stuff like that. You're not allowed to have a relationship.
A delightful place to work.
You're not allowed to have a relationship with anyone at work and stuff like that. You're not allowed to ask anyone out. All these sorts of things. I think at one point,
new world.
Yeah, but despite all of this, I'm pretty sure that they have good people sitting in their offices who are doing the numbers on how many viewers that this person's going to attract. Especially given that I doubt she's going on any, kind of broader advertising. She's not going to be the next Stranger Things, is she? And
Absolutely.
So I think she's just been accosted for what she's worth in terms of audience draw.
Yeah, well, there's not just what you're worth. I mean, in all employment situations, there's a sort of interweaving of a few factors. It's what you're worth, but also what someone else will offer you, which is kind of the same thing in the end. But when you're looking at these really big stars, these really big contracts with entertainers, there's a lot of these lawsuits going on, or just people getting upset because they're not getting paid as much as other people, just because the numbers are so big, and the competition is so high, and it becomes just so tiresome to hear about it, because the numbers they're talking about are many, many times what what the average person makes in a whole year, and these people are complaining that they're not getting double that.
Yeah, like she's earning 23 times the American national average income for this one special.
And she wants 26 times as much as that.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm sure her agent gets a cut, to be fair. But I don't think that's going to cut it down to anywhere near the average.
No, but he's not taking 50%, is he?
Yeah, well, who knows?
Assuming that it's a he, of course. I think that this suit has come out, at the time that it has, not because she was unhappy at the time with the money she was being paid, but because she's seen the story on the BBC of that, who was it who sued for the same salary as some guy who she took over from, or something like that.
Yeah, what was it? That News Watch or something? That evening show that she said was the same as another evening news show?
Yeah.
So I don't remember the names of anyone.
She basically did a BBC World Service news show, and he did the main one. And she sued by saying, we're doing exactly the same job, reading the news, and you need to pay me what I'm worth, which is what he's worth. Note that she didn't just advocate for a pay cut for him. She wanted his money. And so, and she got it. And I think that was... yeah. So I think
I don't remember that bit.
Yeah, no, she did.
I do remember Charlotte Clatock in chat is saying she was based in China and he was in Washington, D.C. I remember that, yeah. I remember this story. And she was saying that they have the same value, even though there were actual metrics to show that he was doing way more work than she was. I mean, at the time, China wasn't really producing many news stories, though it might be better arguable now. But yeah, she just wanted more money. And it takes a very specific kind of person to be like, I want to screw a bunch of people over and lie to an entire country so that I can take a massive chunk of their money.
Yeah.
But
so the one I was thinking of was definitely UK based, and it was a few months ago. So it just goes to show how often this exact story happens.
Yeah. But it's like the grift, like, until someone aggressively shuts down this kind of grift, people will continue to take advantage, and they only need the most spurious of cases, because the companies involved just don't want the bad publicity aside from anything else, I think. It's just...
As I say, the media are the vanguard for this Marxist problem, should we just call it that?
Well,
if the media falls, then the rest of it just crumbles away, erodes away gradually. But they're the ones upholding it at the level it's at now. They're the enforcers. Whatever story you come across, the motivation up the chain is always, well, we didn't want people to call us racist. It's not about friends and family. It's about the media getting their lives destroyed because, oh, look, that person could be lied about and called a racist. Let's do it. Either the country needs to stop caring about racism, which I don't think is the solution, because racism is ultimately, in almost all cases, irrational, but or we need to remove media. I mean, I think you could argue that the only reason they're doing it is because it's a form of media that's becoming obsolete. They need more money, and so the only way to do that is to chase after outrage clicks. Probably not the only reason, but that's a big factor, I think. Well, we may see it intensify a lot more before it collapses, and we are exactly the same kind of person that needs to take over most of what they're doing, not the going out and gathering data journalism part. We can still have journalists. In fact, we don't have any journalists at the moment, but we will do the actual public relations and information conveyance, punditry and interpretation part that they just can't do efficiently.
Well, you've seen, like, now a lot of the mainstream political commentators are pulling, the mainstream, for lack of a better term, mainstream alternative media sources are pulling in the same, if not higher numbers than classical media. And you'll notice that the BBC just kind of pushed through the other week that over 71s no longer get a free TV license at all, or over 75s.
Oh. Squeeze the old ones,
because that was pushed through. That was pushed and then rejected, I think, last year, and then they've pushed it again, and it's got through this time. And obviously, Boris made some weak statement about how this was a bad decision, but basically couldn't stop it from happening. But
Boris do something about it.
The BBC knows full well that their primary demographic now are the over 75s. No one else is paying their license. The Defund the BBC Twitter account grows every day, and I've seen more kind of mainstream pundits, people on radio especially, just talking, LBC and stuff like that, talking about how there's actually cancel your license. That's what I'm looking for. There's a cancel your license button now on the BBC, and urging people to take advantage of it. I think on an interview Peter Hitchens was on just 2 days ago, someone was saying that. So, it's starting to infect the public consciousness a bit more, especially with people like Tommy Robinson, who still has enormous clout in places like the North. I mean, his growth on Parler, for instance, has just been phenomenal. He's now up to... Let me have a look, see...
While you're looking at it, I'll just add something to what you said. The fact that mainstream alternative media people getting the same number of views as the mainstream media, that wouldn't be happening if not for the fact that Silicon Valley and other involved parties are giving a huge leg up to the mainstream media.
Yeah.
If not for that, the alternative media would already be smashing them. It's all part of the just keeping them alive, like clumping some clay onto the edge of the precipice they're wandering towards, so that they can keep walking a bit longer. But there's no doubt that they're going down it at some point soon.
I think I saw something a couple of years ago about they're basically like how many views that certain sources needed in order to trend on YouTube, for instance, and so it was something like. If it was Washington Post or something like that, or CNN, then the average views they needed to get on that trending page was 9,000.
Wow,
that was all they needed to get on.
That's pretty embarrassing.
To get on the news trending page, ridiculous.
Well, it's not. To be fair, it's not a factor of the number of views. It's a number of views per. It's a rate, right? So if you get 9,000 views in 1 minute, that's different to getting 9,000 views over the course of a week.
No, just like that's the threshold. Like the video only had to hit 9,000 views in order to do it, and they weren't. These were not particularly the average number of views for a video on the trending tab was something like 23,000.
Given the number of subscribers that those channels have, 9,000 views is appalling. If like a decent guide for this is at some levels, especially at that level, if your videos are getting the same number of views as your number of subscribers, you're doing pretty well. And so if they have millions of subscribers and they can rely on 9,000 views within the first couple of days or something, then yeah, they're appallingly bad. Just like the Amazing Atheist.
Most videos on trending, I believe, are like videos that were posted that day. Right? It's usually like you go to the trending tab for what is hot, like what are people watching today, not videos. Anything that's on there shouldn't really be more than a day old, I think. So the 9,000 views,
is a 24-hour limit.
It would be in the first few hours, to be fair.
Yeah, probably.
But it might end up with 100,000 views or so, which is still bad if your channel has a million subscribers.
Yeah, and even NSO could do 9,000 views.
Even I can do 9,000 subscribers as of today, anyway.
I saw that. Well done.
But yes, let's go back to super chats. Anakin Cringewalker says the Epstein deaths go further. Deutsche Bank was complicit in the Panama Papers, and that leaker just died mysteriously in a car bombing.
I haven't heard that.
We're gradually working our way up the web towards Hillary.
It's when we find out that like Bill is actually the person behind it all, and he's just been shoveling all this stuff onto Hillary this entire time.
Wow, that would have to be some fantastic acting to look that much like an ancient Egyptian mummy walking around on the planet and actually be the mastermind.
Bathing in virgin tears, no doubt. Imported
you
from
can
Epstein.
Just feel the psychopathy emanating off Hillary, though.
Yeah. Anakin Crinchwalker says, it's simple. Just remember everyone for their worst actions. Colston for slavery, Gandhi the racist, Malcolm X the segregationist, MLK the adulterer. Yeah, it's like...
Don't forget that American president for releasing the slaves.
Oh, yes, like... Oh, Abraham Lincoln, he was such a problem. George Washington, it's such a problem. Like, I'm surprised no one no one brought up the fact that Lincoln said, if I could have won the war without freeing a single slave, I would have.
I think I did see someone say that. But I had a look on the Wikipedia page for Edward Colston the other day when I was covering the story, and almost every paragraph is critical and mentions the slave trade.
Oh, for goodness sake. Is there a cat somewhere? Yes, that's the cat, unfortunately.
Aww.
His name is Jimbo.
Aww.
But there we go. And he's blind.
You didn't want to give him H.P. Lovecraft's cat's name?
No, funnily enough, I didn't think calling a Ginger Tom that was appropriate. Not that I named a cuter
animal.
Not that I named him anyway. You're just a dog person, are you, Ousley?
I'm ambivalent, I guess, more towards dogs, but I have a beagle, only a bit more than a puppy, who is currently asleep on the other side of the room, and I have a secondary camera that points at him for my streams, and I can throw him treats when people contribute enough. And nice. That's a really important part of the stream. His name is Boomer. See, I'm not a coward. I went for the meme name.
So you said, I'll take your blind cat and raise you a puppy beagle that I call Boomer. That's what
let's face it, it's the equivalent of going from a two-pair to a straight flush.
It's a good name for a dog. I was when my kid was born, people kept saying she was cute, and she is cute. And I was trying to think of a way to monetize the adorableness of my child, and I was thinking of setting up a live stream where people could send a tip or a chat to give her a pat on the head or a treat or something.
There is a much darker implication to the idea of sending tips to children on camera.
Yes, that's what I was just about to say.
I'm glad that you probably didn't go anywhere near that territory, but I would be careful with the wording.
Yeah, I'm just kidding. I would never do such a thing. I just, I do indulge these fantasies.
Well, you've got that T-shirt of yours, Poe, which has your face on it, wearing the sort of in a Che Guevara sort of style, wearing the commie hat.
Yeah, I know it well.
Yeah, you should have that on the baby, and then sell that. And just be like, have that extra.
Not sell babies anymore, NSO.
Sell a stylized image of the child in a communist camp. That's what that is. Kathleen Batavian said, "Wouldn't it be fun to have a black actor play an SSer in a World War II movie?" I remember...
I have a suggestion. You go first, though.
I do remember a little while ago, what was it, like Call of Duty World War II or something like that, where
World at War, I think.
Or World at War, where you... No, it wasn't World at War, it wasn't as far back as that, but you could play as a black Nazi SS officer.
Oh, play as. Okay, yeah.
As part of that. Yeah, definitely. That was quite funny.
I had a suggestion after that super chat, which was new pitch. World War II movie where whites play all the enemies and victims of the Nazis, and non-whites play all the Nazis and their allies. That'll be inoffensive, right?
Isn't that just a black-faced Iron Sky?
Yeah,
I was
don't see a
thinking of
problem
Iron
with that.
Sky as well, but I couldn't remember the name of it.
Iron Sky was weird because they white-faced some black guy.
Iron Sky is the kind of movie you would think I would like, but I fucking hated it. But
yeah,
this would be great. This would be great because you wouldn't matter what the plot is. It's just there to piss people off.
That film was just there to to appeal to the so bad it's good crowd, and it ended up being very insincere and
much
not
worse
good,
than
right?
that.
Go on.
I think so. Yeah.
Is there anything to add to that, Uzlu, or is it just it was bad?
No. She said that it was supposed to be appealing to the too bad it's good crowd, and I said it turned out to be much worse than that.
It's not.
Yeah, in my opinion, it was so bad it was bad, kind of thing.
Exactly. Yes.
Straight past the bell curve territory there for bad movies.
Yeah.
Straight into the reeds.
But I know loads of people who enjoyed it, but just I didn't. I think we'll do one more.
All the films that you have seen, I can't believe you've seen Iron Sky.
I've seen plenty of films, though, just not particular films of historical interest.
Okay, well, I'm pretending to be the Britisher today, so I have to. You understand?
I do.
I'm just doing my job.
My girlfriend sat me down the other day and said, "Right, you're watching Rocky 1 through 4 because you've never seen those." So I did do that. Although we skipped Rocky 2.
I haven't seen them either
because apparently that's a rehash.
It's probably the least memorable. Yeah.
So we skipped that one. What else?
Was that the early days of training montages? So they didn't even try to obscure it. You just watch it and it's like, oh, that's a really obvious training montage. But of course, it's the first days of them. So
it's unbelievably predictable, but they're great films. They're really satisfying to watch.
Really good, yeah.
What else did she make me watch for the first time? Fight Club.
What?
That was definitely... I hadn't seen that before.
Oh my god.
I haven't seen that either.
What?
See.
I honestly, Fight Club is good. It's not like, I'm not going to say it's the best film ever or anything. It's a film that I really, really liked when I was 17, which is kind of that's the best and the worst thing you could say about it.
Edgelord Poe there at 17. I'm watching an 18.
Well, I'm just saying that I was not interested in film at all when I was that age, and then I watched Fight Club, and I was like, oh my god, film could actually be good. I never really realized what the appeal of watching films was until I watched Fight Club. So that's my recommendation of it. For an adult, maybe it wouldn't have quite that appeal.
Oh no, I enjoyed it. It was nothing like I imagined. I didn't know it had Edward Norton in it, for instance. That was quite a nice surprise. And
my chat's making the valid point that if you've seen SpongeBob, you don't need to see Fight Club.
It's true. I've watched a lot of SpongeBob.
Although I haven't seen that either.
Did you have no childhood, Uzlu?
My childhood was Spyro mostly, and what actual cartoons or films did I watch? Oh, Star Trek Voyager. There you go. That was my childhood.
Yeah.
Voyager. Interesting.
If anyone isn't aware, I'm running a RP based on it. We just finished season 1, and I've been planning season 2. In fact, I might scalper at some point soon and do my own stream. And I was going to do a new stream, but I might actually do a Wizards in Space Series 2 planning stream instead, because people have been asking for that.
Fair enough.
In case no one's interested.
We'll ask them for that.
We, I was always more on the Stargate side of the divide when it came to Star Trek. Stargate,
I haven't seen that either.
Mate, that's not even a divide.
Although I did enjoy I did enjoy watching. I think I watched all of the original series of the Kirk the Kirk series of the OS Star Trek at one point. And that's great. Like, I can remember distinctly this episode where they've literally got a rug and you can see that there are people under the rug, and that's apparently an alien. And it's so campy, but it's absolutely fantastic. And they have this, basically, they give them torches. And then whenever they want the alien to do anything, they shine the torches through the rug, and then they pretend that it's melting the rock and stuff like that. That's great.
Brilliant.
Sounds like there's one species, I can't remember its name, the Shellyak in TNG, that is basically just a rug over some lights.
Amazing. And then I watched a little bit of TNG, but it got a bit ex machina in terms of they just kept using the Q too much, as far as
I hate the Q.
It's only like 4 episodes with Q in.
Yeah, but still it's too much. I mean, the first episode of TNG is just Deus Ex Machina plus Star Trek. It's just, hey, we've come to arbitrarily judge humanity, even though we're going to do a piss poor job of it, and then throw some Borg at you, because that would make us worthy of the same judgment we just fucking put you through. It's just it's a bad start to a Star Trek show. Definitely.
Ignore the first season, okay? Ignore the first season.
I agree.
Star Trek: The Next Generation is a top-notch, excellent show with some very campy,
Voyager.
bad episodes in it.
Voyager, the first 3 series are not great, but 4 is better, and then 5 and 6 are top tier.
I used to watch Voyager. I watched that first because it was on TV when I came home from school. I don't know if that was the same way that you watched it, Uslu, but
similar.
It doesn't have a place in my heart for that reason.
I watched. Maybe I just got a bad run of it with the early start to TNG. I did watch. I think I watched all of Enterprise when that came out. That was quite good.
Which is a very mixed bag. There's some really good episodes, but there's also some really shit episodes and aspects to it as well. But I should rewatch that, actually. There are some good bits.
Sorry?
Why are we talking about Star Trek, is what I said.
I managed to derail the show. I was trying to keep it going.
We were talking about... Anyway, I think we've reached a natural end point for this evening. But... yeah, just double check. There's no more super chats to go through or anything like that. Unfortunately, my throat is giving out. But
was this an hour and a half stream?
I know. So it's like an hour and a half.
You lazy bastard! I do 4 hours and I feel guilty. It's not enough.
Look.
Give the people what they want. Me.
This show has a very particular runtime, which is an hour and a half to 2 hours, and that's just the way it's worked. It's the way it's always worked. I may end up doing long streams from time to time. We've done a couple of 3 or 4 hour streams.
Quote unquote long.
I gave up on TNG but stuck with Enterprise. What the hell?
My thoughts exactly.
Fair enough.
As I said, the real Star Trek experience is coming to watch Wizards in Space. There's an entire series 1 for you to watch on my channel.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. The shilling has begun.
People have actually told me it's better than other Star Trek shows.
Thank you very much.
It's certainly better than the new ones.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Although they're renewing Discovery, as far as I'm aware, which is just... I cannot understand that career move. It must have made them some money. Although it's a streaming platform that they're selling it to, so I don't know. Anyway, thank you very much to my guests for joining me this evening. Thank you very much to Poe the Person for standing in for the Britisher. Thank you for joining me.
No problem at all. I just made a video earlier today that you can go and check out if you want to see some fresh new takes on an old subject, shall we just say.
So Scowen's just chimed in and said, 71 seconds late, you're getting worse again. Time to go back to ruining planets. Thank you very much, Scowen. And thanks to Uslu for dropping by. I have not had you on in a while, but...
I know you don't mean it, but you're quite welcome.
I do mean it.
Thanks for saying it anyway.
Always good. Take care, everybody, and have a great night. See you next week.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye.